Afternoon and welcome to the City of Hamilton's virtual design review panel meeting for November 10th, 2022. Today we have a presentation of the development proposal for 1310 South Service Road in Stoney Creek. I'm Edward Winter, the host of this meeting, and panel member David Cluzio will chair the meeting. In addition to panel members, we have the applicant team, city staff, members of the public, and media observing this meeting. Only those involved with the application and panel members will be speaking today. This session is being recorded and will be uploaded to the City of Hamilton's Design Review panel webpage. And lastly, as a reminder, please keep your microphones muted when you're not speaking. Thank you, everyone. David, please begin the meeting.
Thank you, Edward. Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. Can you please confirm the session is being recorded, Edward?
Yes, I can confirm.
And are there any changes to the agenda today?
I have no changes to notify you of.
I assume there are no conflicts of interest with any of the panelists. I'll take silence as agreement with that. Okay, on the agenda today is the review of 1310 South Service Road. The lead planner on the file is Mark Michniak. I hope I pronounced your last name right, Mark. Good afternoon, and we're ready for your presentation. Please keep the presentation under 10 minutes.
Thank you, David. When I do this, can you guys still see the slides?
Presently, I can see design review panel staff presentation on the screen.
Okay, excellent. Everything's set. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark Michniak, and I'm the development planner at the City of Hamilton. Today, we are discussing a proposed development at 1310 South Service Road in Stoney Creek. The applicants have submitted an official plan and zoning bylaw amendment, file numbers ZAC 22063 and UHOPA 22026. This will permit the proposed development. Both of these applications are currently under review by staff. Subject property is located south of South Service Road and to the east of Vince Mazza Way. The QEW is located to the north of the site, and there is an existing district commercial development located to both the east and south. The lands to the west are currently vacant, but are planned for a mixed-use development consisting of several stacked townhouse buildings for a total of 454 residential units. The applicant is proposing a mixed-use development containing 600 dwelling units and 1,200 square meters of commercial space. This is located within two mixed-use buildings of 8 and 12 stories. In addition, there is a residential building of 10 stories. There will be 4 townhouse blocks containing 32 units, of which 8 are proposed to be live-work units. The following photographs were taken during my site visit on November 4th and will further illustrate the existing conditions on the site. Here you see a view of the southern edge of the property looking towards the east. Here is a view of the subject site looking eastwards. Here's another view of the northern edge of the property, again looking towards the east. And from the same position, looking up the western portion of the property, now looking south. This is a view of the property that's located on the opposite side of Vince Mazza Way. This is the site that is currently vacant, but is proposed for that mixed-use development. And then finally, you have a view from the subject site looking eastwards towards the existing district commercial site. Now I'm going to go through the policy hierarchy for this property, starting with the official plan policies. The subject site is designated neighborhoods on Schedule E of the Urban Hamilton official plan, and is designated district commercial on Schedule E1 of the official plan. In addition, this site is located within the Winona Fruitland secondary plan and is designated, again, district commercial. District commercial areas are intended to serve the daily and weekly shopping needs of residents in the surrounding neighborhood. They serve as a focus for adjacent neighborhoods by creating a sense of place. And as these areas expand and redevelop, they are anticipated to create an improved street presence by bringing the stores up to the edge of the street. The urban design policies in the secondary plan promote, among other priorities, attractive pedestrian-oriented environments, high quality of design, compatibility between land uses, and the protection of escarpment views. Property is currently zoned Modified District Commercial C6-301-H112. This zone permits various commercial and retail uses, but does not permit standalone residential uses. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment would add residential uses and modify several development regulations as seen in this table. Staff would ask the panel to consider the following areas of discussion when contemplating the design proposal. Is the proposal compatible with and does it enhance the character of the existing environment and locale? Does the proposal organize space in a logical manner through design, placement, and construction of new buildings, streets, structures, and landscaping? Does the proposal create high quality, safe streetscapes, parks, and open spaces that encourage physical activity and active transportation? Does the proposal contribute to the character and ambience of community through appropriate design of streetscape and amenity areas? And finally, does the proposal respect prominent sites, views, and vistas in the city? Thank you, and that concludes my presentation.
I'm going to turn it over to the panelists to, oh, sorry, it's the applicant's turn. I almost skipped the most important part here. So I'll turn it over to the applicant to provide additional information. Again, please keep your presentation to under 10 minutes.
I think you're muted.
You're muted, Brandon.
My apologies. I knew I was going to do that. It seems like everyone has to do that at least once in meetings these days. Can you see the presentation that I'm sharing?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you, members of the panel, city staff, for giving us the opportunity to present this proposal to you today. We're very excited to hear your feedback and share with you kind of the evolution of design that's led us to this point. I'll start off our presentation by quickly going through the existing planned and evolving context of the area around the site, as well as the evolving vision for the development of the subject site. I'll also take a quick look at the applicable planning framework, and then after that, I'll hand it over to Russell to talk in a bit more detail about the actual design details. So in terms of the area context, the area around the subject site was historically planned as a district commercial center with low density residential neighborhoods to the north and south and some employment lands to the west. Notwithstanding this historic plan vision, recently there's been an influx of higher density residential and mixed use development proposals in the area. A few I'll highlight are the 1290 South Service Road, which, as Mark pointed out, directly west of the subject site, which has been approved for 4-story stacked townhouse blocks as well as some mixed use buildings. 400 Winona Road, which is just to the southwest of the site, is actually owned by the same owner as the Winona Shopping Center, but is proposed for future residential development in the preliminary stages. And to the east at 1400 South Service Road is a proposal for 8 to 16-story residential buildings. So influx of residential development proposals both south and north of the QEW. Yeah, looking closer at the site and the adjacent retail plaza, the site was previously used as a freight truck service station, so it had a restaurant, a gas station, and motel. Those uses ceased in 2012 and were largely demolished in 2014, though there are some remnants in terms of paved areas and signs and things like that. Also included here are some photos of the adjacent shopping centers, which is known as the Winona Crossing Shopping Center. So it's been designed as a traditional shopping center form, but it does include a relatively robust pedestrian network with sidewalks throughout. To give a better idea of kind of the emerging context of the site within this environment, the owner of the Winona Crossing Shopping Center site previously had conditionally acquired the subject site and had plans to expand the large commercial shopping center onto the site as shown in this plan. They'd also previously had plans to expand it to that other site to the southwest that I mentioned is now proposed for future residential development. In the end, the owner ended up walking away from that acquisition because the additional commercial development was not feasible. Today, the Winona Crossing Shopping Center has already been developed for approximately 320,000 square feet of commercial space, with another 50,000 square feet planned on a few of the remaining pieces of land within the shopping center property. It's important to note that that size, the 320,000 square feet I mentioned, already surpasses what the city's official plan typically plans for in terms of the concentration of commercial space within district commercial centers. So it's already fulfilling it and perhaps exceeding what is typically seen in terms of the concentration of commercial space in district commercial centers. When the applicant acquired the site in 2021, they too originally contemplated a traditional commercial development on the site as shown here, but that was also determined not to be viable. And after that, the applicant and the consultant team drew from our collective experience and related to the evolving nature of commercial areas, and in particular, the trend of seeing many traditional commercial centers evolve into more mixed-use centers with the introduction of higher density residential development, which leads to more complete communities with a diverse mix of supporting and mutually complementary uses. So building on that understanding and experience, we've developed in tandem with the applicant a new vision for the site that is focused on a mid-rise, medium density form of development that will support planned transportation improvements in the area. Creating a pedestrian-friendly environment is a top priority. Providing an appropriate mix of uses that includes some complementary commercial institutional uses that will serve and complement future residents, as well as complement the larger scale commercial uses that already exist in the area, and incorporating an expansive landscaping and outdoor amenity program to support the pedestrian-friendly environment that I mentioned and to encourage pedestrian interaction. And this vision is trying to capitalize on the site's unique attributes, which include its proximity to that large shopping center, which offers a wide range of services that future residents can take advantage of. The site's generous separation from lower density neighborhoods to the north and south, which help mitigate any concerns related to shadowing and views. And the influx of new residential development proposals in the area, which are bringing the incremental improvements in terms of the active transportation network in particular, which I'll get to in just a moment. So a key focus when it came to the design of this development was how does it fit in with this emerging context? And we've tried to carefully design the proposal to fit into that context and to improve connectivity as a focal point. So as part of this new proposal, we are proposing to include a new sidewalk along the east side of Vince Mazza Way, to expand the pedestrian trail along the south side of South Service Road, which is proposed as part of the development to the west, provide multiple connections to the adjacent shopping center to feed into the existing pedestrian connection or network there, as well as to the planned transit hub, which is located in the southeast corner of that plaza and indicated on this map, and also include opportunities for additional connections to adjacent properties if they are redeveloped or changed in the future. I won't rehash this too much because Mark's already been through it, but as he mentioned, the site's designated district commercial right now, and we're proposing to redesignate it to the mixed use medium density designation to permit the development. In terms of the zoning, as Mark mentioned, we're proposing to amend a few provisions related to setbacks from the street and the adjacent commercial property, as well as the maximum height of the buildings in order to permit that mid-rise form that I mentioned. And with that, I'll turn it over to Russell.
Thank you very much, everybody. And it's actually great that we've had the opportunity of being able to work on the site and the transformation to a mixed-use development. Next slide. So just going over the site plan, I guess, Brandon, you haven't left me with that much time, so I'll try and move through it relatively quickly. But the idea was to create a strict street frontage along the South Service Road, along the QEW. Similar to the intention of bringing the retail to the street frontage, we brought the residential buildings. With the building on the northeast corner, 12 stories, we create a very strong transition from that building. Not only do we terrace the building, but the corner building is designed at 8 stories. But working through the scale of the project in order to create a connection and obviously a reduction in scale to the buildings or the proposed buildings on the west side of Vince Mazza Way. And with that, as we head towards the south and the southwest corner, we've incorporated a townhouse scale project which relates directly to the opposite side of Vince Mazza. So creating this scale and this reduction in scale, with the southeast corner being a 10-story building as it relates to the shopping center, which we see as eventually being redeveloped to mixed use. And as we've seen in a lot of examples all around Ontario, the intensification of these shopping centers and the coexistence of residential to the shopping center as well. Next slide. This is an overall view which describes what I said with the 3 mid-rise residential buildings at 12, 10, and 8 stories, and you can see strictly that the transition that we're creating towards the west. We're trying to turn our back a little bit. We do front onto the parking lot of the commercial and deal with it with landscaping and detail. With the overall scheme, what we're doing is we're creating a central courtyard which provides all the amenities, the exterior, the outdoor amenities for the residential buildings and for the communities. To the north, obviously, we have the QEW, which is a bit of a noise source. So in order to create sort of private enclosed areas, we provided all the amenities within the center of the scheme, sort of leading out to the connections to the community. Next slide. This is a view, as you can see, looking southeast towards the corner building, and this is the lowest of the buildings that we created. We create a very strong 3-story base and a further step at the 7th story where we start terracing it. There's a terrace at that higher level, using materials which obviously relate to the residential and to somewhat of the surrounding or the emerging surrounding community. You can see along the left-hand side or along the South Service Road, the intense landscaping where we provide access and pathways which sort of encase the whole site. So surround the whole site, and you can see the larger scale building on the rear on the left, which is the 12-story, but again, articulated to relate to each other. Next.
Russell, I just want to,
yeah, no,
kind of running over a bit out of time. Yeah.
Have I got a few more minutes? Is that okay?
I can give you a few more, but...
Okay, Brandon, you better go through these quickly. So this is the relationship of the townhouse to the corner building, and this, you know, how we're dealing with the street front along Mazza Road in a very interesting way with creating the public and private relationships and a mix of materials on the building which relate to the other buildings as well. Next. This is a view looking towards the southwest, and you can see the relationships of the buildings, how we're creating step-in, how we're dealing with a corner, articulating and playing with the balconies, and creating fun facades with a very strong base element and obviously a top element as well, which relate to the scale of the surroundings. Next. Playing with brick colors as well. So not only are we articulating in terms of different materials on the building, but we're playing around with different colors as well, obviously to reduce the scale of the development and identify each building as in its appropriate position and relationship to the other buildings as well. Next. Just a close-up showing how the ground floors are very much articulated, working with the public realm that we are creating at the moment, and you see how the terracing works above the 4 stories at the 5th story, so a definite definition to the built form. Next. And that's similarly for the other building as well, and a lot of emphasis on the ground plane, private and public sort of amenity space. Next. And a view on the interior looking towards northwest, towards building A, which is the lower corner building as well. And you can see a lot of attention is paid to the public realm and the internal courtyard that these buildings are created. Next. If I can spend half a minute on this one, how we're dealing with the ground plane. The intention is it will obviously be phased in some way, and the corner building on the northwest corner will be the first one. We've located the ramp to the underground in that location. So what we're trying to do is get everybody off the streets in terms of vehicular access, and therefore creates more of a sort of walkable community internally. On the north side, we're creating each between the buildings these special public or semi-public private spaces, which relate to the amenities, which is in blue, internalized loading in all cases. So to make this whole environment very, very friendly and public with a lot of different experiences and different amenities, and you'll see that in a second in the landscape drawing. Next. Just some of the upper floors. Go to the next one where the building steps up, and then getting into the landscape plan that I mentioned. So you see the trail that runs all the way around. We call it the walking trail or connection to the trail system. Intense landscaping, which is a continuation of sort of that natural landscaping on the south side. So dealing with that frontage, obviously a little bit of a frontage and landscaping as we face onto the commercial and onto the commercial to the south. But different experiences with the residents' gardens, with kids' play areas, and each one becomes a special thing. So something on the south which relates to the townhouses. Within the townhouses, we have a great muse area, which has got also that private public space, and some parking within that area to deal with the retail to make that successful, and some visitor parking as well, and then sort of outside barbecue areas and that. But everything has a strict connection, a pedestrian connection to the buildings, to Vince Mazaway, to South Service Road, and obviously to the commercial plaza. Next one.
Russell, I'm going to have to.
Okay.
I'm going to have to cut
if
you
you
short.
Could just shoot through the few. Just go through the.
I mean, we're familiar with your document,
okay.
so it's not that we haven't seen these. Okay.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to turn it over to the panelists for questions, and for the first one, Dana.
I have no questions. Pass.
Second person is Ted, if you have any questions.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if this is an applicant or city question, but the planned transit hub, trying to understand what that is, how that works, how this building then connects or makes a strong transit connection, pedestrian connection to that.
I can certainly speak to my understanding of it as an applicant who's kind of reviewed what the plans are, and perhaps staff can add any additional input that they might have. I just need to find where my plans went, and I'll pull up that plan that shows kind of the location of it for you. Bear with me 1 second. So hopefully you can see the plan now with the planned transit hub indicated by this kind of municipal symbol in the southeast corner. So my understanding is that when the Winona Crossing Shopping Center was developed, the city acquired a 1 acre piece of land. So they already own this land, which is why it's not developed. The idea is that the city has been exploring ways in order to bring transit to this part of the community. Right now, this community does have access to kind of like a kind of a taxi transit interrelationship system, but the city is exploring avenues or options to expand or extend dedicated transit service to this transit hub in order to provide dedicated transit for the community. So that's obviously the land's already there. I haven't seen anything to indicate when that's happening as of yet, but there certainly are news stories that it's still being actively looked at, and hopefully will be introduced in the near future. So from our perspective, I mentioned earlier that that plaza does have a fairly robust, for a retail plaza, pedestrian network, including walkways that would lead directly to the transit hub. So we've tried to provide connections that would directly tie into that central spine of pedestrian sidewalks within the plaza, so that residents from this new development would have direct access via those sidewalks to the transit hub. And obviously a big goal too was providing a transit supportive density here, so that when the transit is introduced, it can be supported and leveraged, and hopefully that can lead to improved transit service sooner than later.
Okay, thank you. A related question, on page 20 of your document, there's a fence that seems to be a pretty sizable 2-meter fence that runs the perimeter, at least on the south and the east of the project. Whereas in some of the renderings, there's low fences, and in the landscape plan, it identifies fencing. Can you tell us about that? Is the intent to actually wall off this structure or this courtyard space and disallow movement into that courtyard space from, for instance, this view?
The intent, you want to speak, Brandon? Or?
Go ahead, Russell.
The intention is obviously to create a screen against the Costco parking lot, which sort of wraps around the south end of our site, and it depends on the adjacency. There's a new building proposed on the south as you go around this corner, on the southeast corner there. So that's the intention of the fence. Probably a bit of a misconception on the rendering here, but there is intended to be from that space between the two buildings, from our 12-story and our 10-story, there will be, the intention is for a strong connection in between you through the plaza, linking through to the South Service Road.
Okay, thank you. And the last question, on the landscape plan, I didn't see an identification of how the trees are to be detailed, and clearly the entire site is below grade parking. Do you have details that will allow those trees to grow to the canopies that you're showing in a healthy way?
You're correct that we haven't detailed that as of yet, but what we are proposing is some significant play in terms of topography. It's probably hard to see on the screen, but there are some contours shown where specifically, I'll start at the north end along South Service Road. We're looking to incorporate some kind of landscaped berming here and there, which has a dual function of adding some additional noise screening, while also adding some visual interest to those walking along the trail. And it provides an enhanced ability for obviously soil depth and soil volume, which is obviously what you're getting at with your comments. So we haven't gotten to the point yet. We haven't submitted for site plan as of yet, but certainly at that stage, we'll have to detail how all of these trees will be provided with sufficient soil volume. But the intent along the north and in the central areas of the site are to work with topography so we can have some built up areas that have some more native soils available to the trees to support them to their full growth.
Okay, thank you very much. Those are my questions.
Jennifer.
Yeah, two quick questions, although one was probably just answered. I was worried, I was concerned about privacy and sound control from the highway. So you've said there's some intermittent berms there. I'm wondering if there's anything else for privacy and sound control.
On the sound control front, we've had a noise study done, and it's certainly identified the need for enhanced glazing for those north-facing walls facing the QEW. But Russell assures me it's nothing that's outside of the kind of the norm, or maybe not the norm, but outside of certainly what's feasible. So there will be enhanced glazing, and then along with that, the typical recommendations in terms of the centralized air conditioning and warning clauses and things along like that. But certainly the intention with locating that central plaza internal was that it is well screened in terms of noise from the QEW. And part of the idea with that berming is we'd like to, one of the ideas that the applicant has is to incorporate a very large daycare facility into the proposal. That's what this outdoor play area at the north of the building is located. And originally we had it located more internal to the site, away from the highway, but we wanted to include it in what would be the first phase of development. So we're working with the noise consultants to come up with some interesting ideas to provide, appropriate sound screening in a way that doesn't look like a sound wall. And so that's where a lot of that berming comes into play, to try to get something that provides kind of dual function of sound screening, but also visual screening, so that daycare play area is kind of its own area that's screened from everything else. So the combination of the enhanced glazing as well as the landscaping, the berming is what we're being told by our noise consultant will do the trick in terms of the noise screening.
Okay, thank you. And hopefully one quick other question. Is any of this planned to be rental accommodation, or is it all condo?
The tenure is still being explored. Certainly a rental option is something that the applicant wants to explore. At this stage, though, we submitted back in August or July, so still in need of doing the market feasibility and figuring out how everything will work once we get a little bit further along.
Okay, thank you.
Hoda.
Hi, thank you, David. And thank you for the applicants for the presentation. Following to the question that Jennifer just asked, I'm wondering for the, you talked about the berming, that's awesome to have some noise barrier and visual barrier. I was wondering about the pollution of the highway. Have you had any thoughts about that too?
Something that will need to be explored in more detail, because there are obviously strict standards in terms of daycares and their location proximity to certain uses. So the daycare aspect is still something that's being explored. Obviously, there's no point in designing a space if it can't be filled and it's just going to sit vacant. So it requires some more fleshing out of the intent and working with potential operators to understand not just their own preferences, requirements, but also any legislative requirements associated with air pollution. So I expect that's something we'll have to deal with as we evolve this a little bit further along.
Okay, thank you. And my other question is about the courtyard and the great design that you have there. I was wondering, have you studied the option that keep the courtyard for pedestrian and probably have the visitor parking or the temporary parkings more at the south side to keep a bit the parking lot of the commercial to work as a barrier also? Have you studied this option or not?
Russell, do you want to deal with kind of the parking layout?
What we were trying to do, obviously, we need those roadways to access the underground parking. We need those roads to access the two easterly buildings for loading and for drop-off areas. So we've kind of located the parking near the entrances in that area. There's not a lot of them. I think there's 30 odd or 40 parking spots as well. So are you suggesting to bring a separate road along the south to put the visitor park in there? Or you see, we bring the parking to the underground immediately under building A. So we get all the cars out of the way, 600 cars or whatever it is, or a little bit more, and immediately off the way. These are just all for convenience stuff. We've tried to do it except for the two areas. Most of it's parallel parking, typical street parking. We can explore that a little bit more, but just for clarification, Hoda, are you suggesting a separate road, or are you suggesting, I'm just not sure, moving the cars to the south, what you are?
Yeah, I haven't got to design point of view how it might work, but I was just wondering because at the south side, it's just a fence between the parking lot and right away
That's why we're trying to screen
houses.
that area. You know, we can relook.
It's not screening for sure, having the parking lot, but it's the same language, having the private parking, then having the public parking. I was wondering maybe that could be an option, but for sure that's why I asked, have you studied, have you tried? Because yeah, you were talking about the access to the underground parking, and there are several aspects to.
Yeah. We're running a little on time, so I think
Okay.
the questions really should be clarification, and maybe we can move on to. Do you have any other questions, Hoda?
Okay, no, I'm good. Thank you.
Iana?
Sorry, I was muted. No questions. Everything was answered. Thank you.
Okay, I have just two questions. One is, do you have a sustainability agenda on this project? I may have missed it in your documents, but do you have some sustainability goals that you're aiming to achieve on the project?
What we're doing at the moment, the intention is to meet obviously the Ontario Building Code. We haven't looked into going any further than that at this stage, so we'll be reviewing that together with our clients as the design progresses.
Okay, you made some minor changes to your setbacks. What is driving those small changes?
I think the biggest sort of thing is this corner building. As you can see, the property line jigs and jogs quite a bit. So in that, you can see in that corner on the westerly portion there, we get relatively close to the property line. So, it's basically a site configuration and trying to create somewhat of a pure building form. So,
Okay.
and there's a lot of setback, and there's, the boulevard's really huge, so we don't see that as an issue.
Okay, I just wanted to understand the specific location, if you could.
That's the biggest, and the other one is along the southerly portion against, which is, we've got bigger setbacks. Again, it's in small sort of areas we're getting closer as well. But generally, we're meeting most of the requirements, and we got fair setbacks everywhere.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to the panelists for commentary. And thank you for your presentation. So the first person is Dana. I ask her to give some feedback.
Hello, and Brandon and Russell, I just want to say thank you. That was a really well thought out and detailed presentation that mimics the well-detailed design work that you guys have brought forward to the panel today. I do really appreciate this proposal and the fact that, you've really thought about the urban condition and bringing mixed use and residential into what is otherwise, a more suburban shopping center. I think that you've put a lot of design work in. From my opinion, my particular strengths to this proposal are the private amenity space for the ground floor units, how the ground floor units address the greater proposal, as well as the interior private amenity space and park area that you've designed as part of this development. Some of my concerns or some of my things I wanted to bring forward for further discussion or design work is the surface parking that you have internal to the site. I'm wondering if it could be either scaled back or if some of the angled parking can be removed, as I just wonder if that's a little bit odd and awkward as it kind of encroaches onto the amenity area, but also just in terms of the safety, in terms of people entering and egressing from angled parking spaces. Thank you for addressing the daycare question and comment in your discussion in the question period. I was thinking it might make more sense to move the daycare to the indoor amenity space that fronts onto the in the interior green space, as then the kids could kind of come out and play away from the Queen Elizabeth or the QEW, and then also, the adjacency to the playground. My concern with the daycare play yard as it is adjacent to the highway has to do with noise as well as wind. I did notice there wasn't a wind sensor for that area, so I would just maybe ask that you consider how you're going to mitigate wind as well as noise from that daycare play area if it's going to remain in that location. Just to make sure that that space is comfortable year round, as I know kids go outside every day. And then my other comment, just for future iterations and as you're moving forward in the detailed design is just to ensure there's accessibility and connection to the surrounding retail as it stands today, but also to ensure that that is part of the development in case there's future redevelopment of those retail spaces moving forward. Thank you, and that's everything from me.
Thank you, Dana. Ted?
Thank you both for the presentation and the documentation, which was very thorough and complete. So thank you very much. We always appreciate that. I think this generally is a really strong proposal and support it. Appreciate the mixed use. The townhome conditions at the base I think are strong, and of course the courtyard is the greater goal here. That the sum of the parts is the greater whole, and so applaud that and applaud the intent to make this a walkable space that connects to transit. Having said that, I think it's really discussing the details to ensure that those goals can be met through the finer details. I think the courtyard, the fluidity of that, moving through that internally, I think is important, and it comes to the question of the vehicular movements in the center, and can we make that the pedestrian circulation more pronounced and prominent through north, south, east, west, through that space. Particularly, care has gone to create openings at the middle of the quadrants. So connecting directly through those and allowing people to pass through this site, I think would help strengthen the intent of creating public realm and not just a private enclosed compound. Of course, the quality of landscape, I think how the trees are planted, executed, are they planters that are elevated, and then how does that impact accessibility and movement on a pedestrian level, I think is important. I would encourage, and you'll probably hear this from others, having less parking in that central space. Can that be either just reduced or moved to the lower level and really create more pedestrian space? The question of the fencing around the perimeter of the site, I think, is a really important one. I feel there's a lot of intent to create a townhouse condition that has a more urban feel or a scale that offers a public realm or a townhome condition, and the pathway that connects around the perimeter of the site feels to me at first glance like it's creating a great public realm amenity for the future of this condition. However, when we see a full height fence, an opaque fence, that an inaccessible fence along the perimeter, it starts to create a very different feel, and I feel like it diminishes the great aspects that have been put forward by this development that is being offered outwardly to the public realm. By enclosing it, we're making it less accessible to transit, to pedestrians, and for use by the future adjoining neighbors as a truly open and more public realm friendly space. So I'd encourage to rethink the enclosure of this site and how that's done. And then finally, with the building design, I appreciate the different materiality and the kind of rhythm and scale that's been developed and the stepping back. I would encourage you to look at potentially giving more depth to the facade. So we've got steps, we've got the depth of the brick and the detailing and the balconies. Are there some recesses, perhaps vertical at the top level, that start to give more depth and shadow to what is a very considerably large massing, and just helps to break that down a little more. But those are my comments, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Ted. Jennifer.
Thanks, everyone. I'll try to be brief. I do agree with comments from my fellow colleagues here, agreeing with Dana regarding the location of the daycare, wondering if it could be pulled away from the highway to have the kids play in a quieter space. I agree with Ted's comment earlier about maybe reducing the parking in the middle of the courtyard to buy us more green space, to make that more of a livable space. I find the expression of the podium very strong, and I think the success of the architectural design could be even greater if from the podium up could be simplified. So Ted was talking about a deeper texture definition of the massing. I think there's similar solution in there. I don't know if the step backs are necessary. I think simplicity of that form with a stronger architectural move that's already established in the podium would make this simpler and more powerful. To the zoning issues, I have no problem with the proposed change from this being district commercial to mixed use medium density, and I think it improves the livability of that area. That's all from me. Thanks.
Hoda.
Yes. Again, same as my colleague, I would like to thank you for the complete package. We appreciate that, and generally this project looks great, and we appreciate having the mixed use, having the courtyard and outdoor amenities, and also the trail on north side. I would like to echo my colleagues' comments about daycare and the courtyard, having the daycare in courtyard and having less parking lots in the courtyard. I would like also, I think Ted has comments about that. Also, I agree that having the pedestrian friendly of this site, it means that it should be more permeable. It means that more access and more exits. That would be helpful to give some access from the south side. That would be helpful in the future when the public transport is available, that residents could have access, and also to give more possibilities for pedestrians to choose their pathway and shortcuts. Thank you again for your presentation, and that is from me.
Jana.
Thank you. So I think I will repeat a little bit what others are saying. I think the site is not that the greatest location in regard to its surroundings. So, I mean, not the friendliest environment. So it would really be desirable to provide as much really good public realm and outdoor amenity areas within the courtyard as possible. So right now, there's too much surface dedicated to vehicles in the courtyard, and it's a great opportunity to simplify the vehicular movement, and I wouldn't even say reduce, but eliminate all of the at-grade parking and provide much nicer environment for the future residents with a larger amenity area. And when thinking about those future residents, could the courtyard be designed to be nice to overlook from the balconies, not to look at more parking, but could it have more programming to start creating some sort of community space, to design some sort of oasis for the residents in this area? And maybe the ridiculous amount of parking from the surrounding uses could be shared with your development, and that way you don't need any visitor parking in the middle of your block, and just to have a small road around the buildings to bring the loading or moving trucks in. So that was just about the courtyard. I think we all struggled with how it could be such a beautiful space and such a great amenity area, and I think that's what we would like to see. And in terms of the build form, I absolutely agree with what was said before. It seems very reasonable to me. I don't have any issues with the rezoning, just the massing of the buildings could be more thought through. I agree with that maybe there is no need for the small step backs every few floors, and the variety can be achieved by different means or vertically with some areas recessed or projected. And I think Jennifer was suggesting the same. So I think it would be, yeah, better to design a lot like more variety within that build form because it's a large build form. I would like to mention one small detail which will matter a lot in creating a great public realm. I think the height of the railings and some non-transparent areas on the ground floor patios suggest that these are planned as private amenity spaces more and might end up treated as fully enclosed and non-transparent private spaces. And I would suggest that you could treat these patios more as front yard patios, at least within the courtyard or anywhere where it's adjacent to a walkway. So we wouldn't create another blank wall, but more having more ensuring a transparency and better relationship with the public realm around them. So designing them less deep and with just low decorative fencing maybe to ensure that transparency. And the same goes for the large fence around. I don't think it's the best solution for the site like this, and more permeability would be better and more desirable. But overall, I think this is a great proposal. Thank you.
Okay, in summing up, I think that there's pretty much agreement from the panel that at a zoning and official plan level that the scheme is very successful, and it is really a matter of refinement that most of our suggestions are coming through. I agree with the panel on pretty much everything that's been said, that the opportunity, one of the major opportunities for improvement, I think, is the vehicle circulation within the courtyard. I think it should be significantly reduced, and that area could be turned into even a lot stronger amenity and an important amenity given its context. I am wondering about this process of transformation that is occurring at these shopping mall centers, and how, you know, this is a single scheme that's working in isolation to some degree of what might be happening around it. And it seemed in the previous schemes, when it was being developed as a you know, some kind of continuation of the shopping, there was an assumption that there would be flow through traffic from the adjacent shopping areas, particularly the one to the east. And it seems that that opportunity should still exist, even though the use is now more residential, and that would provide an opportunity to service the two larger buildings on the east side there without having to drive through that internal courtyard. I think there are lots of European examples out there of courtyard development that turns the whole center into essentially a public realm, and that all of the servicing is delivered from the edges. And I think that would be a major thing. I agree also that the possibility of connecting into these adjacent properties is pretty latent in the scheme as presented right now. And I think it needs to be a little bit more clearly communicated that the intention is that this is going to integrate into the surrounding future development. I agree with the commentary also about the strength of the development of the podium. I think it's quite well done and very nicely refined. I also echo some of the concerns with the character beyond that. The upper levels is in you know, I don't think it's as convincingly detailed, and whether it's the suggestion that Jennifer made or the one that Ted is making, I think that there's an opportunity for refinement in that area as well. I don't know if I have any more significant comments that I think we've, yeah, you know, the other issues I think have already been covered by most of the panelists, and I don't really have issue with anything they've said. So I don't know if you have any questions of the panelists before we close out the meeting, but I think that's all we have to say as a panel.
Thank you very much for your strong consideration. And I was talking to our applicant, Toby is the principal of the applicant. He's on the line as well. And he was remarking that this was a great opportunity to get additional feedback from experts in the industry, and something that didn't exist before these types of panels existed. So thank you all for your your careful consideration and your thoughts and your feedback. And we're looking forward to taking this back and looking to improve the proposal that much more.
Yeah. Well, if you feel that way, you might want to send something into the government. They're pretty much, they might be gutting this process in the latest Bill 43.
We were talking about that too.
So anyway, no, I think it was an excellent presentation. It gave us, a really nice package that generates this kind of hopefully useful commentary. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I think with that, I think we'll wrap it up.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.